The House Judiciary and Oversight Committees are also investigating the Biden family business deals, and now President Biden is claiming that he's handled his classified documents in a, quote, fundamentally different way than President Trump. President Biden also making his comments during an interview with ABC News anchor David Muir. The president was also asked if the classified documents could compromise United States intelligence. And here's what he said.
I don't know of anything, and maybe I don't know of anything that is marked like it was, top secret, highly, et cetera. But I'm told.
So he doesn't know. The president has said in the past that he's always been advised by his lawyers to not comment on this investigation, but emphasizes there have been very few documents that have been classified or found to be classified that were in his possession. Let's welcome in now Harvard Law School Professor Emeritus and Newsmax analyst Alan Dershowitz. Good to see you, Professor Dershowitz.
Likewise.
Well, the president is blaming a lack of his firm responses here to that question, or to these questions, on advice of his lawyers. But let's take a listen to more what President Biden had to say about this. Here he is.
You called the Trump discovery irresponsible. Is there something irresponsible here, though, too?
You're a good lawyer, but you're trying to make a comparison. There's degrees of irresponsibility.
You're a pretty good lawyer yourself, Professor Dershowitz. What do you think about that answer? And
well, he's right. There are degrees of irresponsibility. There are differences. Some differences cut in favor of Trump. Some differences cut in favor of Biden. Biden's team immediately responded more quickly and more appropriately than Trump's team did. On the other hand, Trump may very well have declassified the material before they went into his house. So there are differences. There are comparisons. The main point is neither will be indicted because in the public mind, the acts are similar enough so that if one is investigated and prosecuted, the other should be as well. So it's going to be a tie, and nobody's going to get prosecuted, and all these special counsel will have come to naught, and the American public will have learned very little more than they already know.
In the long-term scale of things, you think this might put a stop to vice presidents and members of the Senate and even former presidents taking classified documents, or maybe they need to address how they classify this stuff, because when you hear from President Trump, he says some of these were just cover sheets or envelopes. There has to be some kind of reckoning from this.
Oh, there's no question about that. First of all, I think every bit of classified material ought to be electronically marked and should never be allowed to be taken out of the areas where classified materials are allowed to be. And if they're electronically marked, they'd be easy to identify, and nobody could say we did it by accident. Also, things ought to be classified much less often than they are today. Today, there's too much classification. Too many things are classified to avoid embarrassment rather than to protect the national security. So I think a general reassessment of the entire concept of classified material and how classified material is preserved and how it should not be allowed to be taken out of secure areas is warranted. But I don't think criminal prosecutions of either the president or the former president is justified based on the current record.
I have another question for you about possible criminal prosecution of a public official. Going back to our reporting and James Rose's reporting on the lab leak theory, the Department of Energy oversees these labs, especially when foreign or when U.S. taxpayer dollars are used. I'm sure you're familiar, and our audience is familiar with the implications that Dr. Fauci was responsible for funneling some of that U.S. taxpayer money towards the Wuhan Institute of Virology, the EcoHealth Alliance, and all that. What do you think about these claims? I mean, everyone from Elon Musk to members of Congress have called for Fauci's prosecution. Do you see anything there for a possible prosecution for Dr. Fauci?
I think terrible thing. It's another example of the attempt to weaponize and criminalize the criminal justice system politically. Fauci used science, and what he said on your show was, we can't be sure. It looks like now it was probably natural, but we can't exclude any possibilities. That's what science should do. The idea of immediately going to the ultimate of criminal prosecution is so typical of our time today. Both parties, both sides immediately say, let's criminally prosecute. And it's been so selective. It really is destroying the integrity of our criminal justice system by crying wolf too often. Criminal prosecution ought to be reserved for real criminals, for people who do the Hamlet soliloquy, to be or not to be a felon. Today I crossed the line from innocent citizen to felon. Those are the people who should be prosecuted, not people who make honest mistakes, whether the honest mistakes involve taking classified material home, or the honest mistake involved giving money to a lab, which it turned out was not secure and not safe. These are, again, honest mistakes. You can criticize, you can decide to vote against people for that, but criminal prosecution should be reserved for real criminals, for people who intentionally and deliberately decide to violate the law. None of the people we're discussing fit that description.
Unfortunately, we have to wrap it up there. There are some people who talk about negligence and whether Dr. Fauci should have known about this prior. We can have that conversation. We'll have that at a separate time, though, Professor Dershowitz, because I know there are some people that will not let this go. Great to see you, as always. We appreciate your time.